Okay. So here we are. Which is looking good. Okay. So who is ready? Because I'm ready. Like SpongeBob. Okay. So we're going to open up recent comments. Things rolling. And I see Harin left a comment here, going to bed, but he's going to leave the stream open. Nice. You'll be able to catch it later. So let's see here. Comments. So my most recent video is doing very well compared to other videos. That's good. Wonder if I have any questions about that today. Let's see. So we had a question about the L-Colored Vowels. We can talk about that really quick. Hello, Lily. Welcome to the chat. Thank you for joining us. How are you? Hope everything is good. I have my caffeine-free, unhealthy soda here, but it's caffeine-free, so. Okay. So, welcome on YouTube. What was it? A day ago, apparently. Ivo Moreira was asking about with the L-Colored Diphthongs, because, hello, David. I sent you a message on Patreon. I don't know if you got it yet. I'm pretty good, Lily. Thank you. I hope David is well as well. Well as well. Yeah, that's correct. Just trying to answer some questions here from the comments to get things started. But Evo asked about the L-Colored Diphthongs, because in that lesson I talked about cool. I talked about how there's actually two ways to do the L-Colored Diphthongs. One is to color the diphthong itself, so you can say like say if it's I will, right? So it's going to be the diphthong I plus ul. You can say I'll, and it just sort of blends into each other, just like if we say like or, right? The O and the blend together as an R-colored O. So, but you can also, you can say I and then hit a small Y sound and not actually color the diphthong itself, but instead just go into that half L from that little Y sound. And you can say I'll. So it's not actually coloring the diphthong. So there's two ways to do them. And Evo was asking specifically about which pronunciation I use and which do I think is more common. And my answer is that I use both, and I'm pretty sure most natives use both. It's just part of the dynamic range and flow. So it's two ways to do the same thing, just like with the TH and the dental T or dental D version. Maguaz, welcome to the chat. Could you speak the way you speak with your friends to see if we can understand, please? Well, generally, that's what I'm doing right now. I do have a bit of a filter that I know I'm talking to English speakers, but I'll go ahead and try to, or not English speakers, English learners. I'll try to drop that. But I mean, if I'm just talking, like, I mean, I'm interacting with you through text, but it would be different, you know, if I was like actually talking to you. Because there's certain things that, you know, I might use that I wouldn't use if I'm just talking. So interaction is an important part, but really the biggest thing, because I'm speaking pretty quickly right now. This is pretty much my normal speed, I would say. The only thing that I might be doing a little different is I probably enunciate a little more clearly than I usually might. Um, so yeah, you're pretty much getting the way that I speak, um, which is good. So if you understand me, then that's a good sign. But Lily, my problem is that I can't make the half L sound, so I can't say I'll fast. Yeah, it's a difficult sound. That's a really difficult sound. I recently posted my most recent video was the half L hack, um, and I needed to post that before I posted the minimal pair for L versus R. Only because there's going to be two versions of that. The first version is say like play and pray. Because we can always just use that dark L. I wanted to put that video first. Then I'm going to do my next lesson. I'm probably going to post is the L versus R with just a regular L sound. So like play and pray, and then with the half L. So instead of play, play, right? Play, pray, play, pray. Um, and so you can, I mean, that's more for your ears than your mouth, but you can kind of maybe try to practice with that as well. Especially, you can use the R as an anchor if you can do the R pretty well, um, and just try to get down into that half L from there. But it's something you just got to generally play with. And don't forget to look at the English Hacks vowel chart because it kind of shows you where it is, but there's a bit of the tongue shape that you need to have. It's not just like, oh, it's right there on the tongue. Um, and it's really hard to describe, just like a lot of vowel sounds. But the half L in particular, part of the reason why I call it a vowel is because it's kind of just like surrounded by other vowels. Um, and that gives you some anchor points. So if you can do ah, if you can do um, you can do and if you can do what I call the high schwa, like book, um, you can use those to sort of try to pinpoint that half L. But again, there is a bit of a tongue shape and tenseness to that half L sound. Oh, oh. Um, but okay, so David, I have a similar request to McGuaz. I was wondering if you mumble like a lot, similar to when you had that phone call the last time. How would you read this sentence? I saw a man with a baseball bat in his hand on one sunny day, on one sunny Saturday. Well, there's one thing to keep in mind is there's a bit of a difference between how we read and how we speak. So if I'm reading something that you wrote, that's gonna it's going to affect how I sound. But that's probably the closest. Like I tried to read that quickly. Um, that's probably pretty close to um, like my fast speed, like faster than my normal speed. I saw a man with a baseball bat in his hand on one sunny day. I want to say sunny day, not sunny Saturday. One sunny Saturday. But I don't normally speak a mile a minute, as we would say. I can speak very fast if I'm excited, but yeah, um, yeah, it's always a weird thing, and it's something that's very difficult to reproduce consciously because it's the way that I speak unconsciously, and I'm not even completely consciously aware of how I speak. Like half the time I say something, and then I'm like, "Wait, did I say that?" Like I don't even know what I said. So, um, and that can be tough. See, that's why like there's no complete replacement for interacting with natives because even if they're not interacting with you, you're just observing them interacting with each other. Um, you get to see that real life communication. Where like I mean, if you watch say like an informal TV interview or you watch, like a TV show where it's just like two people talking and it's informal, relaxed, whatever. It's still scripted, and so it's still good. Like you'll still learn a whole lot out of it. There's still really really good material, but compared to actually like being in real life, like David mentioned recently on Patreon, like being in real life contact with people and observing how they speak to each other directly in real life situations, not as actors. Um, that's like the ideal, but obviously not everybody has that. So it's okay if you don't, but if you can access that, that's definitely going to be the best. Curious about the vowel quality. Okay, interesting. Someone with a baseball bat. Someone with a baseball bat. Baseball bat. Well, the stress, if a vowel is in a stress syllable, um, the formation and the quality of the vowel is largely going to be maintained. Um, with ah, we do have like the lazy ah that kind of makes it a little shallower, but um, and then speed can kind of compress things, but the stress really kind of retains a lot of that vowel. Where if it's an unstressed syllable, I mean, we can reduce it all the way to like a schwa or even completely disappearing depending on certain cases. So like I saw a man, I saw a man, saw a man. You basically just hear like saw man, but I'm saying I saw a man, I saw a man, I saw a man, saw a man with a baseball bat, saw a man with a baseball bat. So you saw a man, baseball bat, saw a man with a baseball bat. Um, yeah. So any of the unstressed syllables, even if they don't have reductions, um, we're still probably going to hit the vowel sounds that they're supposed to be. Um, but they're going to come out a lot faster and shorter. They might even end up a little bit more centralized towards the schwa, but not as like an official reduction to another sound. Um, explain again the SKS SPS thing. Is it just to make the S sound 2 times? Okay, yeah, well, so we'll talk about that. Lily says thank you, and that's a great tip. Good. Um, finally got to say Earl with a half L. Good, awesome. So SKS and SPS, yeah. It's also a bit STS, although that's a special case because the T is an illusion. But uh, in the case of SKS, SKS is the harder one. Let's do SPS first, because your lips can move independently. So you're in an S. All you really have to do for the SPS is just instead of going closing your lips into the P, you just do that. Like you start moving towards like you're going to close them, but you're not even closing them. Like not even close. So like a full close would be so if I say like wasps, 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 wasps. Sometimes we'll actually get like we'll do it twice. Because we're just like we're moving so fast and it ends up doing twice, which is you're not supposed to do that, but sometimes it'll come out that way. Wasps, wasps, wasps. The SPS combination, because I tried to look up example words for SPS when I made that short video, and there's actually not a lot of words that will have that specific combination. But the SKS, that's pretty common. And for that one, again, remember, there's like a really shallow way to do it, and then there's like a slightly more clearer way to do it. It's a bit of a range between like actually doing the sound, like in this case the K, or just kind of like moving the tongue a little bit. But if I do a full K sound, right, like he asks, 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 and that's fine. There, I'm hitting it, and I'm just opening it back up. The front of my tongue asks. The front of my tongue is staying in the same exact place, and I'm just sort of, as the front is here, I'm bringing that back up to close and open again. So all you do, you still keep your tongue there in the S. You could move it a little bit if you want. It's fine. It doesn't matter if it moves a little bit. But you can keep your tongue there in the S and then bring the back up, but don't close it. And that's going to be that sort of like faster, lazier, uh, special way to do it that natives often use. So like asks, asks. So you don't hear a k because there's no close and pushing out, but you can hear the back of the tongue is coming up to sort of block the airflow a little bit, and then it goes back down. Um, like asks, asks, asks. That allows us to speak a lot faster. Um, Now, again, it can't always come out as an actual K. It's going to be an unaspirated weak K, of course. Same thing with the P, right? This is a dynamic range and flow. It could come out one way, it could come out the other way, but it is very, very common and very, very natural to do this sort of shallower, faster way. Um, and it sounds very, very natural. If you always do like like that, like really, really clearly, especially if you have multiple words that might have like a K and an S combination, it's going to kind of stand out, and it might sound a little weird because it might sound like you're over enunciating. But um, yeah, usually we're going to use that lighter version. Okay, so or the half version, as I was calling it, the half K and half P. By the way, when you refer to flatness in terms of vowels, what exactly do you mean by that? I'm asking because a lot of native speakers use that term, and I'm still not sure what is meant by that. Well, I mean, we might use the term differently. um, there's a good chance that we'll probably use it very similarly because it's the way that I describe it, like with the ah, like the ah sounds flat, that fourth vowel sound. Flat is the best word for a reason. Um, so I don't know how what other vowels other people are using that term for and like how they're using it to describe that sound. But what I mean is, yeah, I use it with ah. I don't think I use it with other sounds because eh is supposed to be flat. Um, I guess could be a bit flat if you're not like fully into that position. But anyway, I usually think of ah when I think of flatness. So what I mean is there are some sounds, right? Like so the eh sound, the third vowel sound, that's going to be um, very flat by itself, right? So when we place it, the tip could sort of be inside the teeth down here, or it could kind of rest on top. It doesn't really matter. But the tongue itself is pretty flat, and the sound is just sort of up here in the front instead of in the middle, like the schwa. It's going to be here. There might be a little bit of a shape to it, but it really doesn't matter. It's pretty flat. Um, uh, yeah, the E can also be flat compared to the way that we naturally do it, but it doesn't make that big of a difference in sound, and it doesn't really create an accent, so that one doesn't matter. But for ah, because ah has how it feels in my mouth is if we go from eh to ah, if you just keep your tongue flat like you did in eh, and you just open up without allowing your tongue to curve, you just try to keep it flat, then you're going to sound like ah, 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 So I still have the song. I was going to say sound and tongue at the same time. I still have the sound and around the front of my tongue, but it's just sitting there. It's just flat. Ah, 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 ah. I know it's hard to see. You can see maybe a little bit of shift in my tongue. It's a very small shift, but it feels like there's a little bit of tenseness in that front part, almost like it's kind of pushing forward a bit. And so that's why I say that if you have more of that flat sound, it sounds like you're sort of missing that little bit of shape to it that it's like, well, you need to sort of round it a little bit. Um, Flatness could also be a nice term to describe if a sound, because some sounds sound very round, at least from an English speaking perspective, like O. Um, O feels like a sound, like obviously it's a moving sound more or less, but especially with the lips, but it feels kind of like it goes through the mouth. O, O, O. Um, and if you say like especially like it's really with the lips. The lips are the biggest part. But if you really don't move your lips, you're like it kind of sounds like it's flat. Like you're pushing out the core of the O, but it's not alive like an English O. It sounds bleh, right? So we say see, it's like it goes through a whole circle in the mouth. It goes or ow, same thing. Ow, ow. So if you try to say like ow, I don't even know how you would do that. Like ow, ow, ow. That seems kind of flat to me. Because you're not getting enough of the motion in the mouth. But anyway, that's how I would answer that. Rodrigo, welcome to the chat. My one and only channel member. Join the channel. If you're on Patreon, you can support me on Patreon. If you don't want to support me on Patreon, you can support me directly on the YouTube channel. I now have another place where you can support me. But anyway, Rodrigo is our lovely, lovely supporter, and I am fine. I hope you're well as well. I have a question. Let's say I'm now talking about data in a report from a previous month. Okay. Would I noticed invoices that should not have been in the April's report be correct? P.S. The invoices are still there. I'm double checking the report. Okay. Also, do you think I noticed invoices that should not be in the April's report be correct in that case? Okay, context, let's see. That should not have been, that should not be. Okay, I see. Yeah, I figured, because the one thing that I would correct, I was like, that's probably not what you're asking about. And since you give me these two variations, I figured you were probably talking about the tense there. First, I'll give you a little correction. So in the April's report sounds strange to me. You're either going to want to say in the April report, right? Because it's the report for that specific month. So we're going to use April almost sort of like an adjective describing report. It's the April report. Or you can say in April's report. So without the, because now we don't need the, we're just saying it's the report that belongs to April. That's the month April. But using them both together sounds strange to me. Okay, so should not have been or should not be and contextual differences. So is it correct to say I noticed invoices that should not have been in April's report? That is grammatically correct. It's a perfectly fine sentence. The variation here, I noticed invoices that should not be in April's report. That is also a grammatically correct sentence. But does the context matter? And is there a difference in meaning here? This is a very small detail. I have to think about this. Let's see. That should not have been. And then you say the invoices are still there. So that's a good detail. Double checking the report. There's invoices that should not be in April's report. So depending on, like, if you use should not have been, God, this is so subtle. Depending on which version you use, it may or may not indicate that you still have like you're still going through the reports, or still, you're double checking it or whatever. But that's also partially dependent on other contextual details. Because like, even if, let's say, you double check them, you're like, okay, fine, it's good. And then the next day you're talking to your coworker and you say, I noticed invoices that should not be. You could still do that, even though it was in the past, because you're saying that the invoices should not be there. And that's just a general statement that's true. Just because you already checked the invoices in the past doesn't mean that that is now not true. If you say I notice invoices that should not have been in the report, invoices that should not have been in the report. Yeah, context is so important for these things, because my brain is like, there's something, but I can't really grab anything. I want to say that just like you can maybe use the second version, even if you already, you're done with the reports. you could also use the first version, even if you're currently going through the reports. But there's other contextual details that can be very important to make that possible. Most likely, if you say should not have been, it's probably going to be like everything's in the past, most likely. But it doesn't absolutely have to be, depending on other details in the context. So the short answer to your question, here, I would just say should not be. So like you're going through, you send a message to your coworker, say, hey, I noticed invoices that should not be in the report, and now you're just going through and double checking it. That's probably going to be the thing that we would say in this case. Yeah. That's a bit of a tough one. Anyway, good. So I hope that answers the question. Lily, how the dark L works. So how does the dark L work with no S? How does the dark L work? In words like people, intentional. Okay. I tend to add I guess O sound before the L. I just can't make a schwa sound before the L. Okay, good. So this isn't something that, well, maybe I did. I don't think I've talked about this officially in a lesson yet. It's something I need to address. If you go to the dictionary, which remember the most Americans sound generally neutral. The exact sounds are going to be a little different, but most Americans will sound neutral. The dictionary is based off of, I believe it's more like that upper Midwest or the upper Midland neutral accent that is the standard for some reason. And so the way that a lot of people there do it is they'll do the schwa and then they'll do that half L or dark L after it. That's not how I speak. I can speak that way, and sometimes it might come out that way. But the way that I do it, and this might be a Western American thing, I'm not sure, but the way that I do it is I describe it either as the high schwa, like book, going into the half L. It's like, oh, or just a half L itself. That's one reason I call it a vowel. So when we say people, okay, so if I do a schwa with like an L-colored schwa, right? People, 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 intentional, intentional, intentional. To me, that sounds it feels forced. It's like I'm intentionally trying to make a schwa, and I hear other people do it. And whenever I hear other people, because I didn't hear it before, but over the last, like, say, 6 months or so, I started to hear it. And when I hear other people do it, it really stands out to me, and I'm just like, oh, it sounds so strange and ugly, and I hate it. But that's the way that a lot of Americans speak, and it's perfectly fine. But if I say this, people, people, people. In fact, I would ignore what I said about the high schwa to half L because that just kind of makes it more complicated. But see, if you look at a word like this, there's a lot of words that end with like that sort of like ul sound. It'll be described as like an L-colored schwa. Pull is one example where you can't do an L-colored schwa. It's not pull, okay? It's pull, pull. There are some words where you have to use that high schwa. At least that's the way it's written. In IPA, it's that plus ul. But I think you could still describe this as just the half L as a vowel sound, because what I'm really doing, I'm going p, ul. I'm just going straight into ul. Pull, pull, pull. And I think that's the easiest way to understand it and the easiest way to practice it, because if you just ignore the schwa and you don't even try to do the sound first, you just go straight into ul. If you can do that ul sound by itself and you just make that sound at the end, people, intentional, pull. Okay, that's all I'm doing. I'm going straight into that half L. It makes it so much easier. So much easier. So that would be my advice there. Don't even try to do the schwa. Just go straight into that half L. Steve, why is a special before M and N? This question, I hate this question. So, but it's a good question. It's a common question. It's not that it's special. I think that this is an illusion that even confuses a lot of teachers. And when I say an illusion, I don't mean that it's not something. Like, it's not that something special doesn't happen, but at the same time, nothing special happens. And I know that's confusing. The sound is still a. Okay, it's still the sound. But what for probably my guess for a, this can actually happen with several sounds, and I'm not actively investigating that, but I'm going to be investigating more about that later. But especially a, right? So a is in the front of the mouth. It's very open. Of course, we have the lazier way that we can do it, but the full proper sound is very open. A. Now, when we do right, that's still pretty much like middle of the mouth going top to bottom. It's in the front of the mouth here with the tongue. So ah. And what kind of happens is that flap in the back, the nasal that leads to your nose, the nasal flap, it's at the top of your throat. I think because the sound is so far forward and so far open, what happens is that flap maybe gets a little bit either it gets a little too relaxed or it kind of gets pulled out, like pulled down a little bit, so it's not closing as much as it is in eh. Um, and so it's just because like this is up here as down here. Um, and it is, I think, a bit of an American thing. So I don't know, like I'm pretty sure British English still has that sound but I don't think they necessarily have that bit of nasal sound. I don't know, I'm not an expert in British English, but basically what's happening is we're doing the same sound, but that flap is getting kind of loose. And so that will actually happen according to my ears, even if the next sound isn't M or N, right? It's just we don't tend to notice it because when the next sound is M or N, that flap is actually getting ready to open because we do the flap is open so it goes through the nose. The flap is open so it goes through the nose. Same thing with right? If I say which I would say like I don't know, bang instead of bang. But if I were to say bang, 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 it gets that little bit of nasalness if I use that fourth vowel. So I think it's a combination of what I just described with the flat being here, getting a little lazy with that front position of combined with preparation for the nasal sound after it. And that'll loosen it up even more in preparation. So it's not necessarily that the vowel itself is nasal, right? We're not saying and letting it go through the nose, but it's just a little bit more starts to leak up through there. And so instead of saying like at, we say like at, and. I'm still doing the same basic sound. It's just that nasal flap, I think, kind of gets a little more open. That's how I would describe it. So, and it's not necessarily something that, objectively, according to the physics of the mouth, it's not something that has to happen. It's not like a law of the universe or anything. But in American English, it is, at least in American English, it is something that we tend to do. So, why? I don't particularly know, but that's how I would explain it. David, to supplement Steve FX's question, do you still recommend adding a small y in these words like man, and do you still find the lazier man acceptable? Okay. Yeah, see, when I was asked questions like this before, and then I thought about it later, I realized that there's often a difference between the way that we consciously think of things and the way that things actually do come out, but we don't notice it. And now I'm much more aware of that. So let's see. Do I still recommend? If I recommended adding a small y between the m and the a, I don't remember that because if you ask me now, I wouldn't recommend doing that. um, maybe I'm recorded somewhere saying that, but I have no memory of that. But man. Yeah, if I try to add a small y, man, that doesn't sound very good. It should be to man. Now with can't in the negative, I know that's one place where I say there can be a little bit of a y because we do naturally do that. Can't, and that's fine. And do you still find the lazier man? See, now if I consciously think about that, I try to reproduce it, I'm like, that doesn't sound very good, but see, I see man, yeah, yeah. I guess if I'm speaking really quickly, maybe a little bit of a Y could happen for the but it's going to have to be really fast, like messy speech. Not necessarily a lazy version, but could possibly happen. Not supposed to be with man. Um, you're saying, do I still find the lazier man? See, I don't remember saying that was acceptable before. If you've read my Patreon thing, David, then you might understand what's happening here, or what might be happening here. Of course, it could just be ADHD also. But man. See a man over there. Yeah, in fast speech, as long as it's fast speech. If you go down to normal speed, or especially slow speed, no, neither of those are going to work. But if I try to kind of play around with it and say it quickly, they sound okay. You gotta be careful with the met though, because I assume since we're saying for man, um, that it's going to be like a lazier way to say man. But if it's men is plural. So I don't know if the man is related to man or if it's supposed to be a lazier way to say men in plural. I'm a little confused about that, but either way, it sounds okay in really fast speech. That's something that I would ignore for most English learners. But if you hear it because you have really good ears, then just know it's a weird thing that can happen in fast speech. But I definitely wouldn't try to reproduce little things like that. Because if it comes out, it comes out as, that's why, like other teachers, right? I teach you the basics. Like I have, we talk through about the sounds through the course and stuff. And I was giving you, I mean, I try to give you like some little tips and different ways and hacks and stuff. But for the most part, it's like the basics are the basics. You got to find the sounds, you got to produce the sounds. And then after that, when we get to maybe other little variations, like the lazy instead of saying we say where it's not as open as much and whatever. Those are some things that maybe you could reproduce or you don't have to reproduce. But sometimes the way that things come out of natives' mouths, if you have really good ears and you're paying really close attention, you're going to notice some strange things that are just coincidental, and they're not necessarily things that should be happening, or that consistently happen necessarily. So that's the danger of having really good ears, but it's better to have really good ears and notice these weird little things than to not have good ears and not be able to understand, right? So it's a double-edged sword, but it's a good sword. Man, that's so subtle. Thanks so much for your thoughts on that. Yeah, no problem, Rodrigo. I have one more. This sounds a little off to me. Even if it would be in Portuguese, I wouldn't be able to understand it. What do you think of would used twice in this case? Okay. Even if it would be in Portuguese, I wouldn't be able to understand it, even if it would be in Portuguese. Yeah, I can see why you have the question. I don't think this is grammatically correct. I'd have to double check the grammar rules. But I do think that this is a variation in speech. It's supposed to be that subjunctive form that looks, well, that with most verbs look like the simple past. Here it would be were instead of was, so it doesn't actually look like the simple past. But even if it were, even if it were to be in Portuguese, or you say even if it were in Portuguese, you say were to be or were in Portuguese. That's a different question, different problem. But even if it were in Portuguese, I wouldn't be able to understand it. That would be like the standard basic grammar that you're taught. The stupid thing about the conditionals, right? The way that you guys are usually taught is like, okay, there's zero conditional, first conditional, second conditional, third conditional. And you go through and you learn all that, and then sometimes teachers will tell you about kind of like mixed conditionals and some weird things that can happen. But there's all kinds of strange things that natives do that may not necessarily be grammatically correct all the time, but they sound perfectly fine with these conditionals and how we like mix things up. And like there's some things that definitely sound wrong that we would never say, and then there's other things that maybe you weren't taught that still sound perfect fine. This to me, even if it would be in Portuguese, from a speech perspective, not from a grammar perspective, it kind of feels a little off to me, but it actually sounds okay. I know it's probably not, but it sounds pretty much okay. Like even if it would be in Portuguese, I wouldn't be able to understand it. A native might say that. But it would definitely sound 100% for sure. It would sound perfect if you said even if it were in Portuguese. That's for sure. I would probably have said even if it was in Portuguese. Yes, and so now you're saying was, right, which is grammatically incorrect, but something that's changing. If you remember from me explaining that before. Now be careful, because this thing that is changing, it can still sound kind of informal. If you're just using it in speech, it's generally okay. It doesn't really matter. If you're, say, sending a business email, which, you know, we still contract in business emails and stuff. That's a normal part of the language, and whatever. But if it's something that's maybe a little bit more formal, then like, or a little bit more formal in writing, I would say, then you're probably going to want to put if it were, because it does sound better in writing. But if you're texting somebody informally and you say was, it's not a problem. But in speech, which is my main focus, saying even if it was in Portuguese, that sounds pretty okay. Not really a problem with it, even though it's wrong technically. You're welcome, Lily. Haha, you called the plus a possible reduction, reduced version in fast speech. You figured it out. Oh yeah, there we go. I'm smart. E equals third vowel. Yeah. Do you make a big difference between golf and golf? Yes. I know they're supposed to have different vowels, but some speakers pronounce them very close. That is because I'm probably one of those speakers. You'd probably say that I'm one of those speakers. You're welcome, Rodrigo. Because so the speakers who use that L-colored schwa, right? They're gonna say gulf, 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 which to me is very, very strange and difficult to do. It's not very difficult to do, but it's uncomfortable in my mouth. Where again, here I'll probably just go straight into that half L. So I'll just go from good to ul, and of course they're already really close together. Go, go, gulf, gulf, gulf. Okay. So I'm not even going to take the time to go up to the schwa and then back to the half L. I just go straight into the half L, gulf. Where with golf, that's going to be an L-colored fifth vowel, ah. And of course, I have the merger, right? So the merge sound is right here, and then the half L is like right here. And so if you speak like I do, probably most speakers who speak Western American will speak this way. These two sounds are going to be pronounced very closely. Gulf, golf, gulf, golf, gulf, golf, instead of gulf, golf, gulf. With that schwa, you get a little bit more distance and they can sound a little bit more separated. But with the merger and not doing the L-colored schwa, then they're going to sound very, very close. So, and of course, you could choose whichever one you want. You know, if it's easier or clearer for you to do Gulf instead of Gulf, go for it. You know, it's all about making it easier for you because both are fine and they'll both sound neutral. It really doesn't matter. Would you say the words heart and hard sound the same when pronounced with stop consonants? With either with a stop consonant or stop consonants in American English. Oh, I see. Okay, so yeah, so with a stop, because they are stop consonants, so they already have the stop consonants. But you mean like with when we do the stop version of that sound. I know that can be kind of confusing because they're classified as stops, but then if we stop a stop sound, it's two slightly different uses of the word stop. And that could be confusing. But anyway, yeah, so heart and hard. The H is the same, the vowel sound is the same, even though they're spelled differently. It's an R-colored fifth vowel, R, har, har. And then at the end, so of course, if we say the T or we say the D, heart, hard, you can hear that. But normally what a lot of cases, if there's no special connection or whatever, we're going to stop it probably. And so if I say these side by side, they don't sound the same. They do not sound the same, okay? Because if they did sound the same, we wouldn't know which one you're saying. Now, to an English learner, if you haven't trained your ears for this yet, they're probably going to sound the same because you can't hear the subtle little difference in the stop, okay? So if I say these side by side, first the one with the T and then the one with the D, heart, hard, heart, hard. So with the T is voiceless, and so as we drop that voice at the end of R, and we go into that T position, which, well, okay, whatever, I'm not gonna make it more complicated, but we go into the T position to stop it, we need to make sure that the voice is sort of stopped, like the voice is done before we actually close off that stop. And it just sounds like the R like ends really quick, right? So instead of like R, it's like R, R, it just stops out of nowhere. Where with the D, we want the trick to making a D stop is that you're going to do everything the same as you do for the T, except we need a little bit of the voice to come through as we're stopping it. Okay, and we're going to hear that little bit of voice in there. So if I try to do it slowly, I do the D version. Hard. See a little bit here as I'm closing up. Hard, hard. Where with the T, we don't do that. Heart, heart. Now it's just breath because I'm not using my voice. So it's that little bit of voice that gets caught in the close that will tell us it's a D or a B or a G or a G sound if it's a B or G. And it's the lack of that voice combined with the different positions that will tell if it's a P, a T, or a K. And I do have on my list to make minimal pair lessons for the stop sounds like T, D, P, B, and then K, G. So that'll be coming. I have a very long list. I'm working through it. And I'm still working on the ear trainer as well. I'm thinking about making that like a special subset of the stop sounds that you can practice with. But it gets kind of complicated with all the options I have. But anyway, good. So, David, for Caribbean, are you more likely to say Caribbean or Caribbean? Yeah. We love to vacation in the Caribbean. Have you seen Pirates of the Caribbean? Yeah. So for me, I think I'm more likely to say Caribbean. That feels a little bit more natural to me. However, I can and have used both. This is one of the many words that has two pronunciations that are both perfectly fine, like data and data, route and route. It doesn't matter. It does not matter at all. Some people say one, some people say the other, some people say both. I do tend to prefer the first one, Caribbean, and that's what I'll say most of the time. But actually, in the name of the movie, I'll usually say Pirates of the Caribbean. Caribbean. And that's because I think I've heard the name of the movie pronounced that way more often than not. Um, so that could be maybe a media influence on the way that I say the name of the movie, but I can also say Pirates of the Caribbean. I'll say it that way too. So it really doesn't matter. I've noticed a couple of times now that the word however in casual conversation can get quite reduced when unstressed. It could potentially sound almost like the verb hover. That's a good point. However, I disagree. However, I disagree. That's a good point. However, I disagree. Almost. It sounds almost the same. And maybe in some people's speech, they do kind of make it sound exactly the same, but I would think saying it like exactly like hover is going to sound really weird. What I'm noticing is that if you try to say hover, but between the and the v, you bring your lips together a little bit, not necessarily into a complete W, but like a light small W, like hover, hover. Is it hover, 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 hover? So it's almost like you're saying how, like hover, but instead of ow, it's like it's really hard to describe, but it's like you're doing the schwa, but you're adding a little bit of the lips for oo and o or ow, just a little bit, and it's a really weird thing. But yeah, that's a special case, probably because it's a really long word. um, and fast speech can do strange things to function words. Rodrigo, I'm glad I was. I'm glad I was able to notice the difference as you were demonstrating it. Yes, don't make this mistake. I'm glad I was. Okay. Um, remember the simple past. I was. Oh God. I know it's confusing. It might have just been a typo, but I was. You were. He, she, it. He, she, it was. We were. They were. That's simple past. So I'm glad I was able to notice the difference as you were demonstrating it, right? In the subjunctive, the thing that is changing to look like the simple past, because all other verbs, remember, look like the simple past. If I ate, I would tell you. That's not the simple past. It looks like the simple past. Yes, it can be confusing. But for everybody else, I'll continue explaining it because I think you already know what I'm saying. But because all other verbs have changed to look like the simple past in that subjunctive form, like if I ate, I would tell you. To be is the last verb that's finally making that change. But of course, to be is irregular. So it's I was, you were, he was in the simple past. And so that's the change we're seeing. Eventually it's gonna be if I was you, I would go. Right now, that's incorrect. It can sound kind of informal, especially in formal writing. You don't want to use it there, but generally, a lot of people are saying that it's something that's changing. It sounds okay, even though for all the other verbs it already works, right? It's just how we speak. So what you definitely don't want to do is say I were if it's not subjunctive. If it is subjunctive, that hypothetical, like if I were you, I would go, then you can say were, or if you want to say was, fine. Like that's how it's changing, but that should be were. If you're using the simple past, do not say I were. That's going to be absolutely wrong. You're trying to change it the other way. That was not a typo. I really thought that was correct. Well, okay, good. So I'm glad I pointed that out. Be careful. Be very, very careful. So you want to think of it as I was, and I were is the special case that if it's hypothetical, you're supposed to use it, but you technically don't have to. For costume, would you say costume, like I just did, or costume? Yeah, it's very British. Um, I recently watched a Katy Perry interview, born and raised in California, and she used the latter pronunciation, what I always thought was British. Yeah, I always thought it was British too, but I guess maybe Katy Perry's British. She was born and raised in California, but maybe her parents are British. Who knows? um, would you say typo? What? I'm so confused. I'm so confused. I don't know what that. Maybe it was something I said. I don't remember. Anyway, costume. Um, yeah, some of the stupid things. There's a lot of words, not all the words. Like music, for example, has that yit sound. Um, there's a lot of words, and I know you didn't ask about the yit, but this is actually part of it behind the scenes. Uh, there are a number of words that in American English compared to British English, and then even more so in Western American compared to General American, well, non-Western General American, the other General Americans, uh, that where that Y sound gets lost, like news. So I always thought news, say news in the news. I would have swore like I would have bet $1 million that's a British pronunciation, but apparently there are Americans in another part of the country that say it that way. And when I realized that, I was like, oh, huh, that is extremely strange to me. Why would you say news with a Y in it that doesn't have a Y? But that's okay, right? That's apparently, if that's how natives speak, that's how natives speak. And so if you have that Y sound in a word after a T, it will turn into a ch. Just like British people, they say stupid, stupid. If it turns into a ch because that they're putting a Y sound after it and it's blending into ch, just like what you. Um, except they kind of keep a little bit of the y instead of completely blending into ch. Um, so they do the same thing. They'll say costume, costume. Um, and I think I have heard some Americans, not to that extent. I've heard them say kind of like costume with like a light little y and still keeping the t. Um, but I've never heard an American pronounce it that way. Maybe I just haven't noticed. Forgot to include the word "say" in the comment, but you automatically added it. Oh, would you say typo? Recently, huh? Interesting. Yeah. So I just filled it in for you. um, but yeah, that's really weird. Costume, costume. I don't know. Maybe it's British influence. I know there are some Americans who have been like influenced by British English because maybe they like watching the BBC or whatever, and so they'll intentionally adopt certain pronunciations um, without it sounding like overtly British. Just like they still use like the American sound, but they'll like tweak it a little bit. Um, some of us do that, but yeah, I don't know. It's a weird case, but either way, I wouldn't worry about it. I think most Americans say costume. But okay, moving on. Can you read these random words? Yes, I can. I can read. Oh, I see what we're doing here. All right, let's begin the tour. Um, so the first one, it's funny because some of these words that have more than one pronunciation, one of the pronunciations to me, this doesn't usually happen with most words that have more than one pronunciation, but some words, like that first word, to me, one of the pronunciations sounds very natural, but it kind of feels uncomfortable. And the other pronunciation doesn't feel so natural and it feels even more uncomfortable. It's like my brain doesn't know which one is supposed to be pronounced, but I've heard both. And I'm always like, cyan, cayenne, cyan, cayenne. I really don't know. I just, I like to say cyan more, but it doesn't completely feel right. It feels natural, more natural than the other one to me, but it doesn't completely feel right. But then cayenne really doesn't feel right. So it's like in my brain, it's like in limbo. It's just in a no man's land. So I don't know. It's weird. Endure or endure or endure. Either way is fine. Endurance, endurance. No, that would just be endurance. And I would not put a Y in those, not endure or endurance. Some people do. I don't know if they're American or not, but some people do. So endurance, only one way to say that in the way I say it. Fructose. I think some people say fructose, which is very strange sounding. Transient. Is there another way to say this? Transient. I'm not sure why this is on the list because I don't think I've ever heard that pronounced differently. Yes, this one. This is like the cyan. So I say Halloween, Halloween, but some people say Halloween with an A. I like to say Halloween, ha ha. But both are fine. And that last one is a technicality because it used to be pronounced Uranus, and then that became a joke because it sounds like your anus, and so they changed the pronunciation to Uranus. I'm pretty sure that's how that went. But anyway, yeah, it's supposed to be Uranus. So because it can sound vulgar if you say it the other way, I think a lot of people prefer to say Uranus. Just looking for how you tackle these in your accent. Yeah, so that's how. There you go. But fructose is really annoying. I have no idea. It's because I always thought of it as like fruit, right? Fruit is an ooh. You wouldn't say fret. I'm going to eat a fret. No. Fruit contains fructose, not fructose. But whatever. It's just annoying to me, but I know it's another way to say it, and that's fine. I can't cast my personal judgment on it if it's something that a significant number of native speakers use, and still within the realm of sounding standard and neutral. Then that's fine. It's a variation. But anyway, okay, we slowed down, guys. We died. The chat is dead. We're at an hour, and the chat has died. We only lived an hour. Live stream over. That's it. You guys are too slow. Too slow. Which, as I mentioned in the past couple live streams, I'm not taking these to like 4 and 5 hours anymore because, if for no other reason, because my throat is like dead after that. Like I'll have a sore throat for the whole next day, but also because I have many, many things to do, more so than I did before. So we're going to go for about 2.5 hours. So we still have more than half our time left. But just keep that in mind. Unless nobody asks any questions, in which case we're not going to last that long. Let's see. I can bring up some other comments. Talk about the half L's. Talking about Spanish. Oh yeah. Hareen was asking about the use of used to, and if there's any connection with the actual verb used or use. That's a long, crazy explanation, so I'm gonna skip that one. Anything else? There we go. Nice, very insightful. So the first syllable in Halloween rhymes with hall for you, yes. And Uranus is Uranus, yes. I have heard See, so the way you with your the way that you wrote that, I would read that as injure. This word, except of course the stress is on the first part, so that's how I wanted to read it because I saw the J. um, I know that's part of my system. I would write it with a J, but just because it looks like the word injure, that's how I wanted to read it. Yeah, so injure for injure. Yeah, it's I don't like it. Sounds awful. As well as transient. Transient. What? That doesn't make any sense at all. Maybe I'm not even saying that right. Transient. Transient. Trans. Why would anybody do that? That's like not even the same word. That doesn't make any sense. That sounds maybe like somebody from like the Midwest or the South is just like really lazily like, oh yeah, hey, it's transient or something. Like it's, I don't even know. I don't even know how to describe that. Yeah, the endure or maybe endure. That sounds very British to me. If you've heard Americans do it, then okay, I guess fine, whatever. But I don't think I've heard Americans say that. Um, the way I would teach it is endure, because you can say endure or endure. So technically, I guess there's three pronunciations for this, but instead of doing the or, right, you can just make it which is just easier. You don't have to worry about the oo part, endure. Um, you mentioned the subjunctive. How common is that used in normal spoken English? All the time. All the time. The subjunctive is a very normal, common part of grammar. Now, compared to, say, the simple tenses, um, relatively, it's not going to be that common. Just like, I mean, the present perfect is super common. We use it all the time, but compared to the simple tenses, relatively, it's probably not going to be quite as common. Because a lot of things that we need to communicate only require the simple tenses. That's why you can get very, very far with the simple tenses, present, past, future. Um, but the subjunctive it's one of the last things that tends to be taught, because it's a little bit higher level. It's like upper intermediate grammar, maybe lower intermediate depending on when you might introduce it. Um, and it can be tricky, because if you don't understand like the basic simple tenses, the subjunctive is just it's not even going to make any sense to you. And even then, it still might not make sense to you. And then, of course, the what is it, like the past tense of would, could, and should uses what looks like the present perfect. So if you're using third conditional and you say like, or like earlier you said should not have been, that's like the past tense of should, right? Should not have been, a negative past tense. And so that kind of goes usually with the subjunctive. Like if you were at the party, then um, he wouldn't have seen you or something, whatever, or he would have seen you. If you were at the party, he would have seen you. So that's past tense, third conditional. So in the first part we have the subjunctive, in the second part we have that past tense would. But so that's why the order that you're usually taught is like the simple tenses, the perfect tenses, and then you get to this sort of like subjunctive and hypothetical type grammar. Um, well, not hypothetical grammar, but talking about hypothetical things. Um, okay, I mean, in a normal conversation with your friends, yeah, I mean, again, it's a normal part of the language. We use it when we need to use it. It's just relatively, it's not going to be common because we don't tend to need to use it as much as just regular, simpler tenses or the perfect tenses. Um, so it has nothing to do with formality, right? It's just a normal part of the language, whether it's written or spoken. It communicates a certain thing, and we use it to communicate that thing when we need to communicate that thing. So yes, good correction. I mean, not I mean. LMAO at the Midwest South. Yeah. Well, that's what it sounds like to me. Yeah. Or like some old man. Like back in my day. Back in my day, we said transient. We didn't say no transient. Yeah. Gross. That. See, this is another word that has two pronunciations. You can say grocery or grocery, and I wanted to say both at the same time, so that didn't work out very well. Grocery also has two different pronunciations, right? Yes, exactly. See, there we go. I didn't even finish reading the question. Yes, it does. So yeah, that C can be an S sound or an SH sound. That's one of the stupid things about the letter C is that very commonly it's either going to be a K sound um, or it's going to be an S sound, right? Those are the two most common. But sometimes, like the letter T, um, sometimes the C sound will actually be possibly an SH sound, depending on the word. It's relatively uncommon, but it does exist. So, yeah. Laughter. David is dying of laughter. Okay. Uh, Lily, the biggest challenges. So no S on biggest. That sounds like, sort of like a Spanish thing. Like you're trying to make the adjective agree with the noun. Biggest challenges. We don't do that. Might be a typo, but yeah, the biggest challenges to me is are. Are we talking about challenge or challenges? See, we got grammar all over the place here. That's okay. The biggest challenge to me is the dark L and okay, so the challenge is the dark L and can and can't. Got it. Okay, so two things: dark L plus can and can't. Period. I even thought about changing my accent into Australian because the can't and can distinction is way clearer. Um, this is an adjective, clearer, not a noun. If it were a noun, you could say like a way bigger car, right? So it's a noun, a way bigger car. But this is just way clearer. So there's no actual noun attached to clearer. So we don't say the a. Yeah, is way clearer in the Australian English. But I like American English better. Yeah, I mean, that's how it goes. I mean, if you want to get a particular accent, then you have to try to conform to that accent, even with the difficult things. Um, Now, if you wanted to, you could just use the Australian version. I don't know if that would cause any problems because for can and can't and the dark L, I'm not sure off the top of my head how they sound. Um, but it should be fine. You'll just maybe sound a little Australian sometimes. Um, if you don't want that, then you can't do that. But if you're okay with that because it's easier, there's nothing saying you can't do that. You just won't sound 100% American. That's the only thing. So you get to make the choice there. That's the good news. Bad news is if you want to conform particularly to a specific accent, you got to get it down. The good news is that you get to choose exactly, if something seems like just like you try it and you try it and you try it and you try it and you're just like, okay, fine, whatever, I don't care anymore. And you're just like, I'm just going to do it this way because it still works and it's understandable. It just doesn't sound natural or it doesn't sound like that accent. You can choose to do that. That's fine as long as people understand you. That's the main point. So, but I would encourage you to keep practicing. You can get it. I can pretty much guarantee, like almost anybody can get these things. And the only reason why I say almost anybody is because the people I would say can't would be very, very rare exceptions for some weird reason, or maybe people who have like something a little bit off, um, which is very difficult to talk about. But maybe people who, see, I can't even say that. How do I even talk about that in a way that number one is indefensive and number two actually makes sense? We'll just say the norm, which I know is a difficult term these days, but you know what I mean. As long as you have a functioning brain that that doesn't have any massive problems in terms of like the physical hardware of your brain. not in terms of like your mind or anything, but the actual physical hardware of your brain, then um, I don't see any reason why anybody couldn't develop these things. It just might take a lot of work. That's the only problem. Anyway, that was a nightmare to get through. Um, in your neck of the woods, what is the most common generic term for a place where you can order coffee and hang out? That's a good question. I never thought about that. Definitely not coffee house. Well, these days with Starbucks, we're probably just say Starbucks. You want to go to Starbucks? But that excluded, I'd probably say coffee shop. Cafe kind of feels it to me at least. This is maybe just my perception. Cafe always felt to me kind of like either like a little fancier or like European kind of. Like it's like, oh, we're going to the cafe. Like coffee shop is that's what feels really natural to me, I would say. Coffee shop. You want to go to the coffee shop? Yeah. Um, do you pronounce differently depending on whether it acts as a noun or a verb? Probably. Let me double check something. What? Um, mhm, mhm. Hmm. Interesting. Very interesting. Okay. Okay. So the first case, so as a noun, the battlefield was a this word of corpses. I I mean, it's a perfectly fine use of the word, I guess, but I've never actually heard, I don't think I've ever heard this used as a noun. I would say as a noun, it's a very, very uncommon word because I don't think I've ever heard it used as a noun. So I'm not completely sure how I would say it. For the verb, now the dictionary says that it should be pronounced like in IPA, it looks like slough or slal or something like that, I guess, because it's telling me to do the high schwa after which is weird. I pronounce that slough. So, well, slough or slough. Hold on. Think slough their skin. Think slough their skin. Slough off their skin. Slough off their skin. Yeah, they both sound okay to me. But definitely slough. It would be pronounced like this. Well, I guess if I'm keeping my own conventions, slough. Um, sloth with an ah instead of an also sounds okay to me, but not as good. Um, but yeah, I would pronounce it slough. Snakes slough their skin. Um, but interestingly, because the dictionary brought this up, there's one meaning of the word, which means a marshy or reedy pool, pond, inlet, etc. And it says that's actually in northern US and Canadian English. And that pronunciation is slew, like the past tense of slay, to slay a dragon, I slew the dragon. And this pronunciation I use, I'm not from northern US or Canada, but we actually have here, right, like literally right on the border with Mexico. There's what's it? What do we call it? I can't think of the word right now. It's a wildlife refuge. Oh, come on! It's not like I grew up here or anything. can't think of the term for it, but it's like a marsh. It's like wildlife area, and there's foxes in there and all this stuff and whatever. I can't think of it right now. It's just slipping my brain. Slipping my brain. That's also not a way to see. I can't talk anymore. I'm done. We're done. Um, it's slipping my mind. But anyway, regardless of what it's called, there's an area of that right on the border that is kind of like a marshy area that meets the ocean, and they usually have really good waves there. So the local surfers these days, people don't really go there because we have a huge problem with the Tijuana sewage system keeps breaking, and it pollutes our beach because we're the pretty much the closest city along the beach to the border. So that's not fun. But before, it was polluted. A lot of surfers would go there, and we call it the sloughs. So there's an S there as well, the sloughs. So that would be a special one. Sanctuary reservation, no. It's really sad that I can't think of it because it's like I live here, I grew up here, but it's slipping my mind. And it's right there. Now I gotta find it. What is? There's the beach, and then there's the. Oh, I'm gonna look it up. This is so sad. Okay, Google Maps. I have to Google Map my own city. In fact, apparently it's called the Tijuana Slough National Wildlife Refuge, but that's not what I'm thinking of. Estuary, that's the word. The estuary. Yeah, we have an estuary. I didn't even see that on the screen. It just came to my brain like as I was trying to find it. But yeah, we call it the estuary. But officially, according to the U.S. government, it's the Tijuana Slough National Wildlife Refuge. What we call it the estuary because there's the Tijuana River estuary in there. So anyway, yeah, that goes all the way down to the border with Mexico. Which is not very far. Mexico is like literally like a 10-minute drive. Rodrigo has to go. Sorry, it took me a second to see that. You're welcome. Have a good one as well. Thank you for joining us as usual and for being a member. Thank you very much. Anyway, yeah, it's a stupid word. That's the point. But yeah, estuary. There we go. The word zoo uses hello, Oblivion. Long time no see. Or it feels like long time. Time goes by so fast. The word zoo uses the food vowel. Yes. I was gonna say the food vowel. It's like that's the wrong stress. That doesn't make any sense. Yes, oo and oo. For zoology, zoologist, zoological, yes. And zooplankton. Would you say zoo or zooa? Well, there you go. There's your answer. Yeah, so zoology sounds like you're going to give a eulogy at a zoo. I'm going to give the zoology. Will the elephants please sit down? Yeah, zoology, zoologist, because it's like right biology, biologist, archaeologist, archaeology, right? It tends to have something there. So it's not zoa, right? It's not zoology, it's zoa with the fifth vowel. So zoology, zoologist, zoological. Zooplankton is a completely different thing. It doesn't have the ology or ologist or that ending after it. So that's just zooplankton. I don't know why anybody would add something at the end of zoo in that word. That would be weird to me. I feel like I keep improving just by doing the classic shadowing and just by talking to my friends, but it's so slow and takes time. By the way, what do you think? Wow, I'm surprised. I've never seen that acronym before, and I was just like, that makes sense. What do you think about informal teaching on Italki? What do I think, as in, like, if you were to informal teach on Italki? Because I'm not doing that anymore. I assume you're asking for like you or a friend or something, since I have experience with that. Okay, so you feel like you're improving just by doing the classic grammar, so it's good. So you're improving, you're in the right direction, but it's slow and takes time. Yes, it can. Again, remember that there's more than one way to do shadowing. It also is going to depend on the things you need to work on, and how close you're trying to get to that, like native like or native level, whatever. Um, and depending on your native language, right? These are all factors. Um, so we know that it's complicated, but generally, at least for some details, it will definitely be slow and it will take time, right? Um, so that unfortunately is kind of part of the process. There are probably ways to speed it up, depending. You need to talk to a professional to diagnose that, and tell you maybe what you can pinpoint to get an 80-20 benefit out of your current skill. But aside from that, that's the process. But you're noticing improvement, so that's good. It's very good to hear. Very, very good to hear. Yeah, I wanted to ask about your experience and the common things that happen a lot. Well, I don't know about the common things that happen a lot necessarily, unless it's like I don't know about what other teachers do. Um, but so yeah, informal teaching. So it's called informal tutoring on Italki, which I think is a good way to call it. But it's informal teaching. That's fine. Um, things. So number one, as you are probably already aware, all you have to do to be an informal tutor is to be a native speaker of a language. You don't need a certification. If you want to be an informal tutor in a language that is not your native language, then you need to have a C2 level in that language, and you need to provide documentation to Italki that you have that C2 level, and then they'll allow you to informally tutor in another language. I don't have a C2 certification in a foreign language, so I only did English. I wanted to do Spanish, but I found out that I needed a C2 level, which I think is stupid. Like a C1 C1 is more than enough for tutoring in a foreign language, but they're stupid. So they say C2. For those of you who don't know, C2 is like upper advanced native like bilingual. Antonio Antonio Banderas. I wonder if is that your actual name or is that like the actor? I mean I know that other people have that name, but I'm just curious. I'm gonna assume that's your name. Um, from the Sonoran Desert, Hermosillo, Mexico. Mm, Suena hermosa. Muy bien. Anyway, well, thank you for entering the chat, Antonio. Glad to have you here. And yeah, feel free to ask questions. Yes, very good. Yeah, I'm not a big fan of the desert. Like, I like visiting the desert, I'll say, but I don't like living there. I've lived in the desert before, and I do not like it, especially in the summer. Just not my environment. I prefer the mountains and trees. But anyway, so I think my English is already C2, but I'd have to find out. What do you think? You take a test. Okay, so yeah, we'll come back to that. To finish up on the informal tutoring, so what I did, a lot of it is just conversation practice, right? Like people are coming to you and they know you're not a professional teacher because on Italki it'll say informal tutor. Once if you get a professional teaching certificate, then it'll say professional teacher, and then you can still list the class for like informal tutoring, conversation practice, whatever. But if you don't have that certification, they'll list you as an informal tutor, so people know. And a lot of people will just come to you for conversation practice, to maybe help them get corrections, correct mistakes. Um, So an informal tutor is a really great resource for conversation practice, especially if you either can't find a language exchange partner or you would rather give money instead of your time to a partner that you have to spend half the time in your own language. What I did as an informal tutor also, like I wasn't making lessons for anybody, especially before I even knew how to do that. But they would have like certain grammar questions. Sometimes I'd have to look things up, which is fine. Sometimes I still have to look things up just to double check things. But uh, they might have some grammar questions or this or that, and you, you definitely don't have to be an expert in all of that. Sometimes they wanted some help with pronunciation. Sometimes they wanted advice on maybe how they could improve. If I had any ideas for that, and so the informal tutoring is just kind of like a big general mix that doesn't have like an official structure to it. Like you're not giving official structured classes. It's just mostly conversation practice, and then maybe whatever else they might want to work on or have questions about. And if you can't answer something, you just be like, I don't really know. And maybe go explore it together and look it up, right, or whatever it is. So it's as it says, it's informal, right? So you don't have to worry too much about it. But okay, David, when you're meeting someone on a regular basis and they greet you with "How are you?" is it fine to not really reply and just ask them back, "How are you?" and proceed? And what are some other possible greetings? Yeah, I was just telling a student about this the other day, and they were like, "Really?" I was like, "Yeah." So many English learners are always surprised by this aspect of American culture because when we see a stranger, okay, now you're saying when we're meeting somebody on a regular basis, but to an extent, this will also apply to a stranger. Yes, a complete stranger. This is one reason why I say American culture is generally much more informal than a lot of other cultures, even other English speaking cultures. Um, because if I'm walking down the street, say I'm going this way, and this other guy's going this way, and we're both on the same sidewalk, right? Now, a lot of the time these days, like people just won't say anything, right? Which is kind of rude, but whatever. Okay, yeah, we're our culture has problems, so things are disintegrating. Whatever, follow civilization. Nobody cares. But anyway, so he's going this way, I'm going that way, and I might say something like, "How's it going?" Right, which is an informal phrase. And I'll just be like, "What's up?" Which is an informal phrase, and then we'll just keep walking. We don't care. We really don't. We're not looking for an answer. It's just basically like saying hi. Um, or I might say, hey, how are you? He's like, good. How are you? And then I may or may not answer, and we don't stop at any point. We just keep walking. Two complete strangers, just acknowledging that each other exists as we're passing by, and we don't actually care what the answer is. It's a very, very common thing. If you're meeting someone on a regular basis and they greet you with "How are you?" Right? So, "Oh, how are you?" Um, let's see. If you don't reply, that would be a bit strange. I would think. So, like if they say, "Oh, hey, how are you?" You say, "How are you?" and you don't give them an answer. Now it sounds like you're saying, "Well, it doesn't matter how I am. How are you?" Like because there's some problem that you have, and I want to know how you're doing. Like it sounds weird. So we're probably gonna say like "fine" or "good" or "okay" or whatever, and then "How are you?" Um, so there's going to be something there. I would be surprised if we didn't have a little thing. Now we don't necessarily care what the answer is, so we usually just say fine, even if it's not fine, and get on with the conversation. But some other possible greetings. It kind of depends a bit on the formality. It might depend on where you are, but as I said, our culture is kind of laid back. So there's how's it going? What's up? How's it hanging? That sounds a little bit even more informal. Um, what else do we have? Those are the ones that come to my mind more readily. There's probably some other things that we would say. So yeah, there you go. How's it going? How's it hanging? What's up? But those are all kind of more informal. Um, okay, so I think my English sort of C2, but I'd have to find out. Where do you think I can take the test? There are if I remember right, I think you are in the United States. You just Google it. Just type in like which actually for the American standard, I don't know what they do because I know like America has their own like testing system, like the TEFL or TOEFL or however you say it. I don't know. Um, the C2, like the A1 to C2 scale is the European framework scale. So now that should be fine because if you give them an equivalent document from the American scale, then it's not going to matter. Um, but I would look that up, like the place where you live, like the city you live or the area that you live, and then type in like C2 test or C2 English test or something. There's centers because I was looking that up for Spanish before, and there's centers in some places in the U.S. for that. Um, so you just gotta look it up online. Yeah, it is probably going to be expensive though because those tests are not cheap. So yeah, you probably want to make sure that you feel confident that you can pass it, especially the highest level tests. They're really going to try to test you. Um, I just try to teach some Russian since I like helping people and teaching languages or do the language stuff. Plus, some income would be nice for me right now. Yeah, that's actually why I started. Part of the reason why I started was because um, I was like, hey, I can make some money doing this. Like, I never had any intention to teach languages, um, especially not English. Like, if you would have asked me 10 years ago, because I've been doing this for 10 years, like, hey, you're going to be teaching English soon, I'd be like, okay, like, that doesn't sound at all like me in any way, shape, or form. But here we are. So, definitely is a nice little way of in fact, when I was working a delivery job for a sandwich shop on my bike in downtown Tucson, which I hated, and I started teaching Italki on Italki about the same time as an informal tutor, and within I think it was about 6 months or so, I was able to. Now I was, I had a roommate, and then when I left Arizona, I went to my mom's house and I was trying to help her with rent. It's not like I was there completely for free, but I didn't have a lot of expenses. So if you have a lot of living expenses, this probably isn't going to be the same for you. But because my living expenses were pretty low, within about 6 months of teaching informally on Italki, I was making enough to kind of like get by, and I didn't have to have another job. So yeah, it can definitely become something, or just give you a little bit of extra side income. Just found out about your group. Oh, okay, cool. Well, welcome. I don't know. Hoa. Hoa to you too. I don't know what hoa means. I assume hi. So hi. Let's see. Antonio, we, mountains, and the Gulf of California. Yeah, so, okay, so I think it's supposed to be the Gulf of California. Gulf. We were just talking about that word earlier. It sounds like golf, but it's Gulf. Gulf. Um, yeah, the Sonoran Desert. Um, yeah, I don't know the geography of things. I just see desert, and I'm just like, I don't like desert. So you have mountains and the Gulf of California. Okay, yeah. Well, good. Yeah, because as I said, I like mountains. Yeah, I know not all Mexico is just like desert, right? Like I know you have like different elevations and areas and stuff, and but if it's called a desert, I'm gonna call it a desert. What certificates are the best to get for professional tutoring though? Well, see now you said professional tutoring. Tutoring sounds like at least maybe I'm conditioned by Italki language, but I think of tutoring as like informal. So when you say professional tutoring, I'm just like, what? Like professional informal teaching? Um, yeah, so according to the use of the word, you're fine, but I would say professional teaching. Um, the best certificates, I don't know what the best are, but I have a certificate, and it cost me, if I remember, it was like $500. So it better be good. I got it's hanging up on my wall over there, Bridge TEFL. Bridge. I should capitalize all of that. I think Bridge is the name of the company or something, but there's numerous companies that you can get like the TEFL teaching certificate as, like teaching English as a foreign language, and that's what I got. There's other certificates. I just wanted a certificate that looked good and was not unbelievably expensive, like $1,000, because there were some that were like over $1,000. And mine is still a master's diploma. It's like there was one higher than that, and I was like, that's a little too much, so I'm gonna go with this one. But yeah, I mean, if you're doing another language, I wouldn't really know. But if you're doing English, then I don't know, mine works well. So, like, you don't even need the best. Like, as long as you have some sort of professional certificate. Again, like if you're not a native speaker of English and you get a teaching certificate for English, I don't know what Italki is going to say about that. But if you have the certificate, I mean, it should be good. But all I know, like, say if it's your native language and you get any certificate, like Italki is just probably going to take that, and they're going to be like, okay, this is the documentation, you're good. Well, I don't know about the cross language. You have to, yeah, I would maybe look that up on Italki to be sure. See, I don't want to say this in an English way because it sounds horrible. Hermosillo. It's a city. So Hermosillo is. We don't need the it here because it refers to Hermosillo. So you're basically saying it is. So Hermosillo is a city close to 1 million people, and we got a lot of tourists. So tourist people, just tourists. There are a lot of tourists visit this region from the States and Canada too. Oh, well, good. Yeah, that sounds very familiar. Oh, you don't have to retract your message. There are mistakes all over the place. People make mistakes. You need to make mistakes. Feel good about mistakes because then you learn. That's part of why we're here. So you can retract your message if you want. That's fine, but no need to. But yeah, I don't know anybody who has gone to the Sonoran Desert, but that sounds about right. There's probably a lot of tourists that go there. How to link the words group leader and it's you, like that. So group leader. So the P and the L, they can overlap. They can become a cluster, and so you can say group leader, group leader. That P, it's not going to be aspirated. Now, it's technically, it kind of sounds like it's moving to the start of that next word, which would be a stressed syllable, but when the stop sounds connect over, they're always unaspirated. If they keep that sound, so even if it's a vowel, they're going to be unaspirated. So group leader, leader, not group leader. That's going to be too much. Group leader. Or you can actually stop the P. You can say group leader. Both, it's two variations. It doesn't matter which one. With it's you. The E, especially in fast speech, might completely disappear, that first sound. That commonly happens with the word it, especially in it's, and we'll just say the t part. But you go from that T position, push the S through the T, and then just go from the S into a Y, and so it's kind of all up here because all the sounds are up here. See, and then you go into the U. See you. And if you keep the I, it's you. I think I'm well versed in the language learning, but don't know much about Russian as I do about English. Plus, it got rusty over a few months of not talking it. I'm not talking it, not speaking it. We speak a language, we don't talk a language. You could say talking in it, and that's okay. because you can speak in a language or talk in a language. In that case, they're interchangeable. In many cases, they are interchangeable, but not always. It's stupid, I know. It's how it is. It's collocations. I just say hello, what's up, and for questions, how are you, and how have you been? How have you been is another good one. That's it for the most part. I think people still don't care if you don't reply. I don't know. I mean, some people probably do care, and they just won't show it necessarily. Because like if I say hi to somebody and then they just ignore me, like it's kind of like, dude, like bro, what? I said hi, you know. I said what's up. You can at least acknowledge me. Um, but I think also for that reason, a lot of people they just don't say anything at all, and so you know. So back in the day, like 50 years ago, anybody you see, you're like, hey, hi, how are you? Two complete strangers. Now it's just like, we might informally greet each other and not really care what the answer is, or we might just not say anything as we pass each other. So, like, I don't know, it depends. Youngsters care less. Yeah. Yeah, it's something that changes with time. How your experience with Portuguese went. So, how did your experience with Portuguese go? Right. Remember, that's the structure. If it's a how is part of the WH question words, even though it doesn't start with WH. But when we have a WH question, we still need that. It's the same. Did your experience with Portuguese go well? Right. So it's did it go well, or how did same structure. You just put how in front of it, or what, or where. So how did your experience with Portuguese go? And that's the end now. Well, my experience with Portuguese was very brief. The only reason, and it was actually it was good in some ways, but it was horrible in some ways. It was good in some ways because I was actually working a little bit with a friend who's a Brazilian Portuguese speaker, um, and so that was good. But the horrible part was the classes, because I already knew that classes aren't taught very well, and this just reinforced that. I was hoping that since I hadn't taken a language class in a while, and maybe it had gotten better, and I think it had gotten a little bit better, at least from this particular teacher in this particular class. But there was like I was so tempted to just go to the teacher and be like, "Hey, have you thought about doing this and this and this and this?" Um, but I didn't. And so the only reason why I took that class was because I was actually going back to the community college because I wanted to get a degree in Spanish for bilinguals. And I was like halfway done with the degree. And one semester, because of budget constraints, this was like 2 or 3 years ago, um, they didn't have any of the classes that I needed to take that fit my work schedule. So I was like, okay, what else could I take maybe for this semester just to kind of, you know, have something to take? And they had Portuguese. So I was like, sure, why not? Let's take a Portuguese class. Um, and because I know Spanish, I was able to kind of start picking things up, relatively quickly and easily. Most of the speakers in there were Spanish speakers already, because, it's San Diego. And yeah, could have been better. But in terms of the Portuguese language itself, it is a language. It's not on my main list of languages, but it's a language that if I get, say, 2 or 3 extra languages on top of my main 6 that I want to learn, then I'm definitely going to come back to it because it's a very interesting language, especially Brazilian Portuguese. I like how the music of the language. Although I kind of like the sounds, like the actual sounds of um, European Portuguese a bit better. They're mostly the same, but there's a little bit different that I think European Portuguese sounds pretty cool. But I still listen sometimes to some Portuguese music because that's one of the first things I do. Like if I start learning a language or I start becoming interested in a language, I'll just go and I'll look up a bunch of music in that. And there's one person in particular I listen to a lot to, Paula Fernandez, if I remember right. I think that's her name. Yeah. Just kind of like Brazilian country music, kind of. But When someone asks you, how are you in my country, you're supposed to tell them all your problems, health issues, and the, the fight you got into with the clerk at the post office. List goes on and on. Yeah, I think if I remember right, I think that's also in Germany, because I think I remember one of my German partners telling me about that. So yeah, um, or maybe they were talking about their experience in another European country, but I'm pretty sure it was in Germany. Um, oh, I see. YouTube wasn't sure if I should show that or not. That's funny. Um, if you don't reassure the other person you're dealing with as many problems as, oh, interesting. It wasn't a good conversation. Okay, so notice what you did there, David. I caught a rare mistake. A rare mistake. Okay. Say, and if you don't reassure the other, unless I read it wrong, and if you don't reassure the other person, you're dealing with as many problems as they are, because they're saying you are dealing with as many problems as they are dealing with. Or potentially, you could say, if you don't reassure the person that you deal with as many problems as they do, it wasn't a good conversation. So those two have to agree. So probably the you're dealing is a bit better there. So I would change do to are. I finally caught one. But anyway, um, what kind of numbers are you talking about, if you don't mind? In terms of like how much I made, not much. Not much. Let's see. What was I making back then? It's kind of hard to remember. I want to say like somewhere between 300 and 500, maybe. It was definitely probably more on the lower end. Um, but it was probably at least 300 a month. Yes, a month. I know it's not a lot of money. That's why I say like, I didn't have a lot of expenses. um, my throat is getting dry. So yeah, it's like for most people, it's going to be like a little bit of side income. For me, because of my situation at the time, it was enough for me to kind of more or less live on. But especially if you're in an expensive area, um, I mean, you can build it up to something, but if you just want it to be like a small little side income, it's going to be probably pretty small. Um, but anyway, I mean, and that it also depends on how much you charge, right? So keep in mind when I started teaching on iTalki as an informal tutor, because I had no experience, just like no experience in my life, as well as no experience on iTalki. Like I didn't have a history. I said, "Well, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm completely new to this. I don't know if I'm going to be very good at it, and I don't have any history." So I started offering classes for $5 an hour. $5 an hour. Yes, $5 an hour. Not even minimum wage in like any part of the country. And after I think maybe about a month or so, I raised that to like 650 or so because I had a little bit of experience. I had some good reviews. I still have 5-star reviews to this day, and I'm at almost 5,000 classes. Um, and so I was a little bit later, I raised it up to 8, and then a little bit later, I raised it up to 9, to 10. And then before I closed off um, all my classes except my pronunciation course, I was charging for the informal tutoring. I believe I had it set at like $16 an hour, something like that, $15, $16 an hour. Um, but I don't want to teach that anymore. I just want to teach pronunciation. And even, I mean, eventually I'm not going to be teaching that either, but I really just want to teach pronunciation if I'm going to be teaching anything, it like directly one-to-one. So that I'm charging, I think it's $30 an hour now. So anyway, but yeah, how much you charge per hour is going to be the biggest thing. So part of the reason why I wasn't making a whole lot at the beginning is because I really wasn't charging that much. I wasn't even making minimum wage. And the phrase, what are your thoughts? Can the phrase sound like, what are your thoughts? Or is that doing too much? What are your thoughts? What are your thoughts? What are your thoughts? That's going to start sounding non-rhotic. So it's going to maybe sound like New Yorker, Bostonian. Like, what are your thoughts? What are your thoughts? What are your thoughts? So, I don't know. Weird. Yeah, so because they're supposed to, like the what are, that can become whata. That's fine. But your will reduce to your, and maybe there are times where it can kind of reduce to ya, but I don't think your does that very much. Because you would be ya. So if you reduce your to ya, it's like, okay, is it you or your? But what are can do that. So if you say like what are your thoughts? What are your? That's perfectly fine. We do that a lot. If you say what are your thoughts? What are you? What are you? Now again, it sounds like you, not your. So yeah, it's too much. What's good? I don't know. You tell me. I'm confused. I don't know what this is referring to now. That's a very informal greeting, by the way. Like we say, "Hey, what's good?" Like, so I don't know if you're giving me an informal greeting, or if I said something was good and you didn't hear it, and now you're asking, and I don't know. I'm really confused. Um, Einstein says during the chat, "Yay, the person who always asks all the right questions." Um, do you know about the perfective done? I've heard the structure in parodies and videos. Bears related. My question is, what structure is this? I done tried everything. Oh, is it broken English? I would say yes. I didn't know what it was called. I didn't know how to a label. Yeah, that's gonna sound pretty informal. And we actually have a set phrase, which uses the F word, of course. You know. And I'll go ahead and say it, for learning purposes. It's okay as long as I don't say it too much, because then YouTube is going to complain about my monetization. But it would be usually it's with you. It could be I or you, but usually we're telling somebody, like, they do something that was like, that had something that they really shouldn't have done that caused a big problem, right? And you say like, you done fucked up. I'll say not you, yeah, you done fucked up. So that's a very strong way to say mess up, meaning you made a big mistake. You caused a big problem. Sounds very informal, but it is part of regular speech. It's going to sound very informal. In fact, I very rarely use that myself. In that set phrase, that's something that a lot of people would use because it's a set phrase. But using it in general, like, I done tried everything. Like, to me, that reminds me of like blues musicians. Because if I remember, because I used to listen to a lot of blues, and I heard that quite frequently. Like, my baby done left me, right? So, anyway, I would ignore it. Definitely not something that you have to use, but it's pretty understandable. I think. Do you prefer to wear pajamas or pajamas, or do you just call them PJs, or you don't use them at all? Yeah, so I don't. I mean, I think I have like one or two pairs of pajamas, but I don't really wear them. I might sometimes. It depends. Um, I'll usually wear sweats or shorts or just boxers. Yeah, it's got really personal really fast. Anyway, but yes, the pronunciation. I say pajamas. The pronunciation pajamas. I hear some people say that, like Americans say that, and so like I know it's like it's okay, it's fine. But whenever I hear them say that, I'm like, why are you saying it that way? It's just weird. Um, but yeah, both are fine. PJs to me sounds like I think my grandma says that. Um, but to me, like PJs, it feels like something like for kids. Like you're talking to a kid, like get in your PJs. Like I don't know. Antonio, I'm subscribed. Woot! Yay! Thank you. Good to know. Thank you very much. Um, yeah, again, feel free to ask questions. Of course, we are at the 2 hour mark, so we're going to go for maybe about another half hour. Now that the chat is so super lively, of course, hopefully I can catch up. But yes, we only have about a half hour left. So if you have a big burning question, make sure you get it in the chat. But we will be cut off at some point. Pajamas. Oblivion, how do you? How do you? I can't speak, guys. How dare you? I was gonna say like, why would you do this? And then I was gonna say, how dare you? And I ended up saying, how do you? um, it's like two completely different people trying to say the same thing in my brain. Um, some people might say jam. In my experience, most people say jam, but I don't know which one is more common. I just know that jam is the way I say it. Jam is the way I hear most people say it around me. So maybe it's a West Coast thing. I don't know. But how dare you? You say the other way. That sounds annoying to me. That's okay. Um, what are your? That's a good way to try to transcribe it. Yeah. What are your thoughts? That's a good one. Yeah. That wasn't really what David was asking, but because that would kind of be just like a standard, like with no real reductions. Like the your is being reduced, yours being reduced to your, but water would already be pronounced water. It's not pronounced what are. If we contract what and are, it's water. But can you do further contractions past that? That was more the question. Um, for the reductions. When you're ordering food at a restaurant, fast food or something fancy, what is your go-to phrase? I'd like blank. Can I have blank? I'll have blank. I can never decide which one I want to use. Yeah, what do I do? Yeah, so I say, yeah, can I get, yeah, can I get, so I don't even use have, I use get. Um, that's the one that I probably use the most, especially if I'm in the drive-through. Um, and I usually say the yeah because like they come over the speaker right in the drive-through and they're like, "Hey, welcome to blah blah blah. How can I help you?" And I say yeah, and then blah blah blah. Can I get blah blah blah? So, but all of those are perfectly fine. Yeah. Um, so I take it you're keeping them ours. Yeah. Keeps ours. Yes. Can I order? That's a good one. Can I order the fries? Yeah, kind of sounds more like a question rather than a request, but it does work. To me, it just seems a little bit more like you're asking if you can order it. Is it possible to order it? But it still does work. There's no problem with that. People use that. Um, just use any. No one cares. Exactly. Just whichever one comes out. Yeah, doesn't matter. I mean, I speak normally. I don't shorten the words or sounds that much. Well, if you don't shorten the words or sounds that much, then you might not be speaking normally according to American standards. Keep that in mind. I might say ta and ya for tu and you and stuff like that, but it's not too crazy. Usually average. Well, that's fine. Perfectly acceptable. But I don't know. Like I would really have to hear how you sound to give any sort of absolute feedback on that. But definitely, you definitely do want to use some super common reductions like ta and ya. So that's good. Um, but we reduce a lot of things in normal speech, like a lot of things. And you're taught almost none of it in school, which is ridiculous. It should be part of the standard curriculum. I like Pablo Escobar. That seems like it came out of nowhere. Like, okay. Interesting. um, Santiago Bolaños. Bolaños, Santiago Bolaños. I like that name. That sounds cool. Santiago Bolaños. I love Paula Fernandez. I speak Portuguese as well. Oh, very nice. Good. Perfect. Awesome. Yeah, she's really great. My favorite song from her is, if I can remember how to say it right, like Poço de Fogo or something like that. Yeah, I really love that song. I listened when I discovered that song. I was just like, oh my god! And I listened to it like 100 times. Like I could not stop listening to that song. So anyway, of course, I don't even understand half of it, but that's par for the course with me. Japanese music, German music, all kinds of music. Sometimes French music. Oblivion, some dental T's, D's for TH sounds here and there, and some wanna gonna. Okay, that's good. Very nice. I don't think I happen to speak that crazy like at all. I think what are your thoughts should work. No, it doesn't work. It sounds weird. Maybe what are your thoughts could work if you're speaking at the speed of light. It'd be the speed of light, not a speed of light, because there's just one speed of light. um, but I don't think it'll happen otherwise. What are your thoughts? What are your thoughts on that? What are your thoughts on that? What are your thoughts on that? Yeah, maybe if you're speaking that fast, like super, super fast, you're literally just spitting the words out. Maybe you can reduce your to ya in this. Say, what are your thoughts? What are your thoughts on that? But it has to be super, 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 super fast. Super fast. Remember, speed breaks things. So things that normally wouldn't happen, speed might allow you to do. But that's a whole special sub area that you don't really have to care too much about. Because most people don't speak that fast anyway. Like we'll speak really fast, but not necessarily like that fast. So you look at me making mistakes. Thank you so much. It didn't even occur to me. Yeah, interesting. Interesting. Tilly Willy. Tilly Willy. I think that's how you're supposed to say that. I always seen that before. I don't think I've ever tried to actually say the username. I always want to say like to Lily or something. I was like, that's not right. But yes, welcome to the chat. Oh yeah, that's right. I answered a question from you recently. That's right. That's why that seems familiar. One of the comments. Anyway, should I merge and ah? I don't have the merge. Okay, merger. Yes, thank you, Oblivion. Yeah, the merger. Yeah. So okay, good. So let's do this. Okay. So the way that most teachers use these phonetic spellings, right? AH will refer to ah, or something like that, and AW will refer to all, where you have like the lips rounded. Me, I have the merger. I have the cot merger. Yeah, that's what it's called. It's called the cot merger, because these are two words that would be pronounced with the two sounds, and people who have the merger pronounce these the same, like me. And in fact, this is one of the things that I would recommend, like even if you're learning specifically, like say like you want to sound neutral, which most people will sound neutral, including Western Americans like myself. I have a whole special lesson on that if you haven't seen it, about the neutral American accent. And but this cot merger is something that is moving across the country. It has been moving across the country for several decades, and so it's something that even people like in the middle of the country are now naturally using. Not necessarily everybody, but a lot of people are naturally speaking with this merger. It seems to be something that's sort of becoming. It's just becoming a U.S. speech pattern, or an American speech pattern. So, should you learn it, I would strongly recommend it. You don't have to. You can learn the unmerged ah and ah, but part of the reason why I teach you the merger isn't just because I use it myself, but also because then instead of two sounds, you only have to worry about one. And any word that would use either of those two sounds, you just pronounce it one way. which is a lot easier. That's one of the hacks of the English Hacks channel. And as for pronunciation, and it will still sound neutral. You don't have to worry about that if you want to sound neutral. So it's really your choice, but I do strongly recommend it. Yes. So then I don't even know which ones like have which, because they're all the same to me. But like on, saw, father, bought, thought, raw, jaw, law, they're all pronounced with the same vowel sound. Yeah. $5 an hour. Yeah, that's how far I am in the chat. Jesus, I'm never gonna catch up. $5 an hour. Yeah, that's what I started at. Tough times. Tough times. Hey, it's better than free, right? Some people have no experience; they start for free just to get some reviews. I'm thinking of trying to make at least $500 eventually. So while I'm figuring stuff out in my life, I want to have some income. Yeah. I want to go into depth teaching a language. I think as a teacher, you should be able to cover all those parts. I want to start off just helping people with whatever, and then work it up to teaching whatever they need, but usually stuff to do with the accent, speech, vocab, and some stuff for grammar and word choice. Yeah, that's generally what I did. I kind of got into pronunciation a little bit later, but because I like pronunciation, it was something that um, it just kind of like naturally came into my classes, because some people started asking me about pronunciation, and I was like, let me think, let me see about that, and I was like, this is fun, I like this. So and how things work in a language. But yeah, I want to eventually teach English instead, but got to make it to that point. Yeah. How to link the words group leader and it's you. I already answered that. Exactly. Yes. As Oblivion said. I'll briefly recap it again. I answered this earlier before, so you can always go back. But you can stop the P, potentially. That's one way to do it. Group leader. Group leader. Possible? No problem. Or P and L is a common cluster. You can just put them together, and the P will kind of sound like it's part of the next word. Not aspirated. It's going to be unaspirated. Group leader. Leader. Group leader. It's you. You can drop the I. We very commonly drop the I in the it's combination, especially in faster speech. But you have the T, you push the S through the T, and then you have that Y. Sia, 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 and then you have the U, the U. It's you, it's you, it's you, it's you. Okay. It chew. That doesn't work, because that sounds like it and you, because t and y can blend into ch, and then we have, it would be like chew, but that doesn't make any sense. Like it and you, they don't go together, right? So we definitely don't want a ch sound there. That's not going to work. Also, do you think if getting languages to native like fluency or near native one is worth it, especially if I'm going to try to teach you later? Well, if you like want to teach on Italki, where you need that sort of like C2 equivalent level, then I would say yeah. I don't think that it's, I mean, obviously it's better the higher your level, but I think like say if it weren't, for some requirement like on Italki, if you're just like saying, oh yeah, I just want to teach it, like how far should I take it? I personally think that if you have a conversational level of fluency, which would be upper intermediate, that's a point where you can maybe start teaching basics to like people who are just beginners. But the C1 level for sure, like if you have a solid C1 level, because that's considered the professional level. To go to most universities, they only require a B2 level, which you would think, well, like university is like college. Like that's, like you need to know how to speak a language to go to college, right? To go to school, but they only require a B2 level, most of them. Where the C1 level is considered like the professional, like you can handle yourself in a work environment, you know how to be like formal and informal, and you know how to conduct yourself in that language to get a job. So in my mind, B2 is definitely sufficient to start teaching somebody in a language. But C1 for sure, like is a solid, definitely like I don't know why Italki requires a C2 level. It just it baffles me. It should be a C1 level that they require. And a C1 level is going to be very good. I mean, that's not necessarily including your pronunciation, because usually these tests don't care so much about your pronunciation as long as you can speak clearly enough. So that's a separate question. But in terms of like your grammar knowledge, your vocabulary knowledge, your ability to just generally express yourself in different situations, um, if you take it to a C1 level, I think that's all you really need, unless you need to do it on Italki. So you don't need to be native like. That would be better, right? Because you have an even better understanding. You kind of have a better idea of what sounds right and what doesn't. But even at a C2 level or a C1 level, you really start to get an ear for like, oh yeah, that kind of doesn't sound right. So where's he reading the questions from? The chat. There's a chat on the side. Wait, what? Yeah, no, yeah, I'm reading them. There's questions right here on the chat. I don't know. That's confusing. Does not everybody see the chat? Because that would make sense. Like, if you don't know where I'm reading from, it's there. There is a chat. Maybe it has to be opened. I don't know. But jaw is common in the Bay. Oh, like pajamas. Oh, okay, yeah. I guess, yeah. Some areas maybe it's more common for others for other pronunciations. In my culture, it's impolite to ask how much one makes. What about the U.S.? Generally, yes. Money questions, like money, religion, and politics. Those are like three things that are considered impolite to ask somebody about. Of course, there's probably other things as well, but those would be like the religion, politics, and then asking people about money. Okay. No one wants to talk about salary and personal stuff on average. Privacy, private life, salary, relationships are a huge taboo, I guess. It depends on the purpose. Um, yeah, I think that's probably generally like, yeah, anything that is like, as you said, privacy. So like anything to do with your private life. Um, I mean, if it's like your hobbies and stuff, like, hey, you have any hobbies? Like that's a fine question to ask. I mean, that's kind of like a personal, private thing, but that's not really sensitive, right? So just because it's like it's your private life doesn't necessarily mean you can't ask about it. But yeah, what he said, like relationship salaries, like we probably won't ask people about that unless you know them better than maybe. Santiago, thanks. I like your name too. Yeah, good. I don't like my name, so that makes one of us. I used to try to keep the vowels distinct, and I think it's somewhat beneficial to learn the unmerged versions because you hear them occasionally. Yeah, I mean, I get that. I think there can be value in that, like at least for your ear training. You don't have to train your mouth to do it. You can train your ears to do it. That's fine. But I also think, just like say for me, right, growing up, I never knew that there was a thing called the cot merger. I just heard like everybody who said ah or ah, I heard it as ah. So some people who have the merger, I would hear it as the merger. People who didn't have the merger, I would still hear it as the merger because my brain would filter it because they're so close anyway. That's one reason why the cot merger will still sound neutral, because the um, people who don't have it, like they may not even notice that you're merging them because our brain will just compensate because the sounds are so close. Um, especially in the flow of regular speech. So I mean, there could be value in learning the unmerged versions, but I think that it doesn't really matter because your brain is just going to end up compensating anyway. Um, but I mean, there's nothing wrong with trying to hear more sounds. You know, like if you go and learn another language, there's going to be even more sounds for you to open your ears for. So, Felipe, welcome to the chat. Always nice to see you. How to pronounce mother and brother? Exactly like that, mother and brother. Yeah. So it's they're exactly the same, except for the starting part. So it's other, just like the word other. So it's which is what I call the schwa, not the true schwa, but the upside down V sounds almost the same. It's basically the same sound. There. Okay. But for mother, there's an M in front of it. Mother, mother. Stress on the first syllable. Brother, same thing, stress on the first syllable. But now, instead of we're going to go brr, 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 brr. So the lips are close to the B. My tongue is already in the R. And when I let go of that B, push that B out, the R is going to be there. Brr, 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 bruh, bruh. And then that R releases into a bruh, brother, brother, brother. That's why on the internet you might hear people say bruh, bruh, because it comes from the word brother. Right? It's like a really informal way to say bro, bruh. Anyway, however, using just one vowel instead of two very similar vowel sounds is a lot more convenient. Exactly. They're the same, mother, brother, other. Very good, Oblivion. You explained it exactly like I did. Very nice. Except he can't hear you, so yeah. Einstein's, what is the pronunciation of supposed or supposed? Yeah, in they're supposed to say, is they're supposed to say, or oh, okay, you're asking a different question. Or they're supposed? I don't know. I'm not quite sure. I've also heard they're supposed, yeah, it's like they're spo, where we drop that syllable. Okay, so supposed to, I have a different question. Hold on. Suppose Dave. Okay, yeah. Anyway, so it's supposed to, yeah. So yeah, well, what I was asking myself is because can that S be a Z? If it's followed by two, I'm going to say no. Because at first I tried to read it as supposed. Because if there's no T after it, I think that S is usually a Z sound. Or if it's like supposing something that's a Z, not an S. But anyway, it's supposed to, probably because of the T and two, it is an S. Anyway, so your question is it like sa, or I guess like sa or saw or something like that. It's supposed to be sa, right? And it's not the stress syllable, suppose. So it's a schwa sound. And then that other alternative that you're asking about, where we kind of just drop that schwa and go from the S to the P, that is also a perfectly fine way to say it, especially in faster speech. They're supposed to say. They're supposed. Technically, the schwa is kind of still there, but we can speak so quickly between the S and the P that it kind of, we either don't hear it or it just kind of disappears because we're not giving it the space or the time that it needs to be heard. So they're supposed to say. Supposed to say. Notice I'm also saying they're supposed to say. Supposed to say. I'm actually not saying the D or the T there. I'm just going from the S to the and ta. They're supposed to say. That's a special case also. But anyway, you could say supposed to also get that T in there. It's a little clearer. But there's variation in that section. Romance Vico. Welcome to the chat. Check my English, please. Read this, please. The singer sings. What? The singer sing a song. The singer sings a song. Okay. There you go. You're welcome. Well, I can't really check your English because this is a one-way stream, unfortunately. But if you have any questions, I can answer your questions. Although we are almost out of time, and I'm almost caught up, kind of. People need to stop No more questions. No more comments. I'm not going to catch up. I gotta go faster. Where was I? Oh yeah. People usually unmerge before k, g, l. Sometimes other sounds too. Maybe, I don't know. If you pronounced shoulders with the high schwa instead of o, would that sound blatantly wrong to your ears, or is a passable variation? So shoulders. Hmm. Shoulder, shoulder, shoulders, shoulders. Yeah, I never actually consciously thought about that, but as soon as I tried to say it, I was like, yeah, that sounds familiar. That's a perfectly, well, at least in the way that I speak, in my experience, I would say it's a perfectly fine variation. Because I wasn't even conscious of that, it might be a regional thing. That one could be a regional thing. I don't know. But if you've heard somebody not from California say it that way, then I would definitely say that that's a perfectly fine variation. Yes. So I'll use both. I'll say shoulders. I think of it as shoulders, but now that I think about it, I might say shoulders instead of shoulders with the sound. Yeah. People might mishear it as should easily if they're not paying attention. Yeah, except we have the ers at the end. Like should is never going to have an ers. So that's not really a problem. It surprised me when I heard an audiobook narrator say it that way. Granted, she tried to deliver the text in a natural way, so she's not always reading clearly. It probably came out naturally, I would assume. Um, I'm just not quite sure how having this merger affects the I diphthong and before L. Okay. For me, all and doll rhyme. Yes, they do rhyme. Also, the words on soft hot sound very open to me. So for the I diphthong, so that's the thing. I've heard that some teachers teach the I diphthong with the first part of the diphthong being in the back of the mouth, which is very strange to me because like I played with that and I'm like, okay, yeah, that's okay. I might do that sometimes myself, but for me, the start of the diphthong is actually in the front of the mouth. It's right behind the like in cat. So that would be like I. It's up here. Ah, I. But some teachers will say it back here like I. And to me, that can sound okay, but it can also maybe sound a bit Australian. So I don't think that's necessarily right or wrong, but the way that I teach the I diphthong, it starts in the front. And so that's one way that you can separate them if you want to do it that way. Otherwise, that would be a special thing because I don't think it's not using the ah position, the merged ah. And that's something that you would have to kind of figure out. I don't know about that specifically because I don't usually speak that way. Um, Now for before the L, it's just all, right? So it would be an L-colored ah, or what I call the fifth vowel on the vowel chart. If you don't know the English hex vowel chart, um, there should be a link below this video that's links to my website for download your free English hex vowel chart. Not the phonetic transcription method, that's a different resource, but it'll say vowel chart or my website downloads and you'll see the vowel chart and where I put everything, and I number them to make them easier to remember because I don't like the IPA in English; it has problems. But yeah, it's so all and doll rhyme with how I say them. They're pronounced exactly the same. All, doll, call, mall, tall, stall, brawl, etc., etc., etc. Also, the words on, soft, hot sound very open because they are. They all use ah. Every single one of these words use ah, the merged ah, which makes it easier. I think it would be hard to make them a little more closed than make them more open. Why is it? Wait, why is it if different continuous to continuous consonant happen to link, there is who goes one sound, but there's continuous to continuous sound link, but not really blend. I don't really understand the question. or not one sound like the rule is consonant to vowel linking. Why is it different? I don't know what continuous to continuous consonant. I don't know what that means. Yeah, if you can rephrase the question, because I really don't understand the question. All and all sound the same to me, but it sounds like long, not like cot cot. Sometimes I merge them into the cot cot vowel. Long is also ah for when I speak. It's just all, doll, long. The long is going to sound a little bit different because there's no L after it. There's an L before it, which might slightly change the exact way that the vowel sound comes out, but it's not officially changing it in any way. It's just interference from the L position. But in all and tall, it's actually an L-colored vowel where it's blending with the half L or the dark L. So that's going to make the ah sound a little bit different. But it starts in the same position, ah. People do say while and whilst, like wall or something. Oh, whilst is something that I never use. I heard an American use that the other day, and I was like, "What? Why are you British?" I'm like, he's like the only American I've ever heard say whilst, and I was really confused by that. But anyway, let's see. While we're at it, 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 while we're at it. Yeah, it could go all the way into all, but I think we actually do it a little shallower than that. It doesn't actually get into ah. It'll be kind of like maybe almost like the because it's supposed to be while, which is I. And so actually what we're kind of do is instead of doing the I diphthong, we sort of just L color the start of the diphthong, the ah sound, and we'll say wow, which sounds almost exactly the same as wall, but wall is actually a little farther back. Um, I do hear people with the merger say it like that. It's like saying fall, I guess, just while and ETRC, maybe etc. I don't know. How does it usually sound when a punchline someone uses ain't? Okay, what? Oh, when in a punchline, I missed the word. How does it usually sound when in a punchline someone uses ain't? I'm not sure what the question is. Like, what do you mean punchline? Because punchline is usually like the end of a joke, right? Like you tell a little everything leading up to the funny part, and then the punchline is the funny part at the end. So I'm not sure what that has to do with ain't. Ain't is just an incorrect, informal way to say is not or are not. So that has nothing to do with the punchline. Dictionaries usually have unmerged ah. Yes, that's true. For all doll, or for all doll is usually given unmerged. I believe most natives will have some small rounding for doll, though, due to the L coloring. Yeah, see, and this is another reason why I give you guys my way. Use the merger. Don't worry about it. Don't worry about the IPA. Don't worry about the dictionary. Sometimes it's okay to check, you know, but focus more on your ears. That's why I always emphasize for you guys to focus on your ears and use the hacks that I give you, like the cot merger. Just focus on the cot merger. Don't even worry about two sounds existing. It makes it so much easier for you. Then it doesn't matter what the dictionary says. Mocking. Mocking uses ah also. I don't know if that's what it's related to. Oh, okay. So on your question, like sarcastic or mocking, I guess maybe I don't know. I personally say doll and all the same. Yes, and I don't say doll like cot. Well, they're all the same to me. You might be confusing a little bit with the L color because it does make it sound a bit different. but it's supposed to be the same. It's the same basic sound, the same starting position. But my fall vowel frequently sounds like cut cut. Well, then doll should also sound the same. So I don't know what you're doing there. I guess it's arranged. Maybe sometimes people unmerge, sometimes they do, but usually everything works in the same way. Yeah, people with the cut cut merger, as David pointed out to me a long time ago, will, without realizing it, unmerge sometimes. And so you will sometimes hear me, for example, if you listen closely, sometimes I will use the unmerged versions and I don't even realize it. But usually I use the merged versions. The sound's going to be unmerged. Not always, since. Yeah, the Bay, well, we know the Bay Area has some strange things. You're welcome, Felipe. People in the Bay also unmerge before F and N, so it's going to be unmerged like long. See, and then, I mean, generally people don't really have to care about that. Like if you're trying to speak like the Bay Area, then that's useful to know, so you can adapt to it. But it's a lot simpler just to say like, just always merge it. If Josh orders a hot dog, he's ordering a hot dog. Yes. Someone without the merger with a strong East Coast accent would say hot dog, hot dog, hot dog. Yeah, something like that. Usually my cut merger unmerges, not unmergers. Merger is a noun. Unmerges itself before those consonants. I guess that could happen. Okay, I gotta catch up. Okay, how do you link the words group leader and it's you? I already answered that 2 times, so you can go back and find that in the stream because I've already answered that 2 times, and I need to go, so I'm trying to finish this up. So no more questions, people. That is the last question. If you want to say goodbye, that's fine, but no more questions because I'm over time and I got to be going soon. So let's finish this up here. I feel like bottom line, you can say everything just using the cot sound even before L. I hear some Americans do that. I don't think most people would care to notice. Exactly. I know, right? Ramon. Welcome to the chat. I like that name, especially because it starts with the R. Ramon. Anyway, hey, at the beginning of a word, which the syllable stress is not the first syllable, can I use the schwa sound? I don't completely understand that question. We have a bit of a grammar issue there. At the beginning of a word, so if the first syllable is not stressed, can I use the schwa sound? I think that's what you're asking. If the first syllable is not stressed, can I use the schwa sound? That's going to depend on the word. Very frequently that does happen. Very, very frequently. That's a common thing that does happen, yes. So the simple answer would be probably yes. But it depends on the word. That's why instead of trying to learn some rules, especially the very common rules, it's very good. But at the end of the day, listen, if you're not sure, find an audio file, like go to forvo.com, forvo.com, and you can find recordings of native speakers from different countries. Here it would be the United States, and listen to the word. You can listen to multiple people say the word. And if your ears aren't open, you got to train your ears, do the minimal pairs. I'm still building the minimal pair trainer software as well, so you'll be able to use that. But ears come first more than anything. It depends on the word. Jessica Silvestre. I don't know if that should be said in a Spanish way or it would just be like Sylvester in English, but BR. Hello from Brazil. Oi, tudo bem? I hope so. My Portuguese is extremely limited, so I don't know. If you type it, I'll probably understand you because I speak Spanish. But yes, thank you for stopping by, and as I said, we're running out of time here, so hopefully you'll be able to come back next time. David, just for the record, the shoulder person was born and raised in California. Well, there you go. Could be a regional West Coast or California thing, or maybe she's also from Southern California and maybe it's a regional thing here. But I can't say for sure on that particular point, but I do know that I say both of them. So, yes, tudo bem. Muito bom. Muito bom. Very good. Very good. I think. Even the basics of Portuguese, I'm not sure about, but I try. Anyway, I mean, I actually forgot there was an L, so it can actually work because UL is close to OL. Possibly. I guess the Bay accent has an incomplete merger. It might. Yeah, there's, as I said, there's weird things happening in the Bay Area. Things that are apparently changing or that have changed compared to like the rest of California or the rest of the West Coast. So, yeah. Poor Josh, we've been keeping him prisoner for over 2 hours now. Yeah, poor me. So, though I have the merger, doll and all sound the same to me. Kind of like an unmerged as in law. Is it the same thing for people who have the merger? Based on your question, I'm wondering if we have the same understanding of what the merger is. Because maybe I'm not quite reading that right, or maybe it wasn't written quite right, but okay, so doll and doll. So that IPA symbol that looks sort of like an A in like you wrote there in doll, and then that sort of backwards C symbol. I pronounce cotton cut differently. That's what I mean. Oh, okay. That makes a little bit more sense. But yeah, so the thing that looks like an A and the thing that looks like a backwards C, right, which would be ah and aw. In the merger, it just becomes the one sound, right? There is no more ah, there is no more aw, there's just ah, ah, ah in the back. So the sound that was here, the symbol moved back here, and this sound moved back here, and we lost the lips. So it's just one sound. So that's the merger, just so everybody's on the same page. And then when you L color that sound, so the L colored ah and the L colored aw are going to sound probably pretty similar, but a little bit different. Like if I can do it, let's see, it would be doll, 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 and no, I'm doing the wrong one. Doll, doll, and all, something kind of like that. They sound kind of similar to me, but I would use the merger and just color the merger for both words. So they would sound exactly the same for me because I'm just using ah, the merged ah in doll, and the merged ah in all. It's exactly the same, 100%. Which I also use in the word law, except now it's not L colored, it's just the ah by itself without the ul attached to it. So basically, people who have the merger, all of those are going to be pronounced the same and they're all going to sound the same. It doesn't matter if there's an L attached to it or not, or it doesn't matter if there's an R attached to it or not. Like R starts here, R. It's all the same position right back here, nice and easy. Okay, have a beautiful rest of the day. It's 3 p.m., I believe. 3:13 p.m. It might have been 3 p.m. when you asked the question. It's exactly midnight over here. Okay. Put your pajamas on, yeah, and go straight to bed. Awesome. Well, thank you very much. If you're still here listening to me try to finish up. And I'll head over to Patreon because I'm sure I have a response from you waiting there. So have a good night. And the thing is, for me, the unmerged doll and all sound the same. The unmerged doll and all sound the same. That it could, okay, that's probably just a lack of ear training. Like, because for many English learners, right, E and I sound the same, E and A sound the same. These are common problems, or and ah sound the same. And that's, you just have to train your ears. Now, if you're going to learn, or if you're going to speak with the merged version, then you don't even have to care. If they sound the same to you, that's great. Because if you're using the merged version, then you're going to pronounce them the same anyway. As long as you can understand the words, it doesn't matter if they sound the same or not. That's kind of like it doesn't really matter. But if you want to speak with the unmerged version and be able to perceive the unmerged version, then you have to train your mouth and train your ears to use and hear the unmerged version as two separate things. So that's just basic ear training and pronunciation training. But anyway, okay, so that's going to be all for today. We're at 2 hours and 45 minutes, a little bit over, but that's okay. If anybody has any other questions who is still here, definitely bring them next time, right? We had quite a lot today, so that's good. Nice full session. Otherwise, have a really great week. Everybody stay safe. And yes, thank you. I'm not sure how to say your name. Tilly Willy. Tilly Willy. There we go. Tilly Willy. It's a fun name to say. Yes, thank you. You have a good night as well. And I will see you guys next week, same day, around the same time. Okay. Bye-bye. Just call me Tilly. Okay, I'll just call you Tilly. That'd be easier.